Hey guys, welcome back to Simply Fit. I'm your host, Sandy White, your number one health and wellness cheerleader. And on today's segment, we have Dr. Steenblock, who's going to be talking to you guys about stem cell research. Before we get into all of the wonderful things he'll be sharing, I do want to thank WYTV7.org for allowing Simply Fit to be on their platform for a third season. Guys, we're on a mission to save 1 million lives by encouraging individuals to live a simply fit life through health and nutrition so that they're able to overcome suicide and depression. With your help and with the platform of WYTV7.org, we're able to reach our goal and then some. So check out WYTV7.org and all of the wonderful things that we're doing in the community. So now let me share a little bit about Dr. Steinblock so that you guys get a really good understanding of why we're talking about stem cell research today. He is an expert in nutrition, vitamins, supplements, as well. He has developed different diets for people with degenerative diseases that help them to reach optimal performances, as well as to perfect the body's response to the treatment. He is legendary. He's a legendary stem cell doctor who continues to change the lives of people throughout the world. While stem cells are often presented in the media as controversial, Steenblock has been working with stem cells for over 40 years and has treated the most vulnerable in society, those with degenerative diseases such as cerebral palsy, ALS, Alzheimer's, and more, to overwhelming positive and shocking results. So, with that being said, we want to welcome Dr. Steinblock to the show. And if I said your name incorrectly, correct me. I apologize. I want to make sure it's correct so folks can get you.
Yeah, it's Dr. Steenblock.
Steen.
Two E's.
Steen.
Steen. Steenblock.
Thank you. You
so it
can
means
correct me anytime.
a rocky field. And
That's
my
all right.
ancestry back many hundreds of years ago, we were farmers. I came from a farm, and we had always rocks in the soil. We always were out picking up the rocks. So our name became Steenblock because we had a lot of rocks in our fields.
Well, I will not mess that up, Dr. Steenblock. So, how did you get into stem cell research? Was this by accident or by choice?
Oh, it was by choice. I was the 1990s was the decade of the brain. You remember that? And so during that decade, for 10 years, I did nothing but stroke rehabilitation. And the only trouble was with stroke rehabilitation was that we didn't have stem cells. And so, or at least none of us were using them or applying them or doing anything with stem cells. But we did have hyperbaric oxygen. And it turned out if you gave a person with a stroke who had a stroke 2, 3, 4 years before, if you had them come in and do a hyperbaric oxygen therapy every day, hyperbaric is high pressure oxygen. You go in and sit in this hard chamber, you breathe the oxygen, and for an hour and a half or so, and that raises the level of oxygen in the part of the brain that's been damaged. And then that causes the brain to start making new blood vessels, and you start having, over time, the formation of new blood vessels to repair all of that damage. And so you wind up with some pretty good results, but it takes time. It takes like anywhere from 40 to 60 treatments. And so when each treatment costs, say, maybe $150, you're talking about, $15,000 plus all the time and effort it takes to get to the office, back to the office, have an apartment there, et cetera, et cetera. So it could cost easily $20,000 to $25,000 by the time you finish with that. But at that time, there was nothing else. And so people came from all over the world, and I had 6 chambers running full time, and I had like 6 physical therapists working, and I had all kinds of things going during those 10 years. And then in about 1999, people started saying, well, isn't there anything else? And I said, yeah, I'm going to start looking. And I started looking. And sure enough, I came across stem cells. And they were just starting to be used here and there. The Pasteur Institute in Paris was just starting to do it. And so I managed to get a hold of a few stem cells and started to use them and found that they were very effective for a variety of different things. And so it gradually became more and more of my practice. And by the time 2003 came along, 2004, I was doing pretty much all stem cells rather than hyperbaric. And the reason for that was because you got just as good a results with stem cells, and it didn't take all that, 2 months of therapy and 2 months of coming to the office and all that. So you could do it cheaper and more effectively and very quick as compared to going through all this hoopla of coming to the office and having a 2 hour, hour and a half, 2 hour treatment every day. So stem cells became part of my life, and I wrote the book on stem cells in 2006, and it was a compilation of a lot of things. I did the first study in the world with cerebral palsy and stem cells, because at that time nobody had done any studies, and so I was the first to do a clinical study with stem cells and cerebral palsy. And I chose cerebral palsy because they were the simplest, the easiest. They were young, they were healthy, they had only brain damage, and so whereas a stroke patient has had hypertension, they've got high cholesterol, they got usually gut dysbiosis, they got heavy metal poisoning, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't want to go to a case where there's all kinds of other complications that can prevent the stem cells from working. So I chose cerebral palsy, and sure enough, they worked quite well. And from then we just started expanding from cerebral palsy into other things. And so now I'm not saying that stem cells don't work for stroke, but you should evaluate each person because each person at that age in life is usually, they're 70 years old or so. You may have accumulated some of these problems that I was talking about. So heavy metals like cadmium or iron or lead or mercury, platinum, uranium, all of these different things can interfere with the stem cells. And so I look at stem cells as sort of like going back to the farm. I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, and you learn quickly that you can't grow a crop if you have rocks in the field, or if you have a lot of weeds, or the soil is not prepared correctly. And so you don't have a junkyard and try to make it into a garden. You have to clean up the junk. And so you first have to clean up all the junk, clean it up, get rid of that, and then start making sure that you got good soil, good nutrition, good fertilizer, et cetera, sunlight, water. And if you do all of those things and have good seeds, you're going to wind up with a good crop. But if you don't have good seeds, and if you have a lot of junk in your system, you don't get such good results. So our goal is always to try to figure out what it is that is prohibiting a person from getting well, and then try to change those things so that they do get better. Now, just as I say that, I'm thinking, the number one thing is oxygen. And so oxygen is an important aspect of any stroke patient and their recovery, because of the fact that about anywhere from 45 to 90% of all stroke patients people who have had strokes, they have a problem with oxygen at night. And so they're not breathing enough oxygen. They're not getting enough oxygen into their systems during the nighttime while they're sleeping. They don't know it. Their family doesn't know it. And the only way to know it is to measure it. And that's called a nocturnal oximetry test. And so we need to know that that is a problem. If it is a problem, you need to be on oxygen, because then you have a chance of healing during the day. If you get stem cells or have hyperbaric or whatever else you're doing, you need the oxygen at night, because if you don't get that oxygen at night, it causes damage to your brain, damage to new blood vessels, and you don't get better. So you have to have everything working correctly. And so start with number one, get oxygen, make sure you have enough oxygen at night. And then we go on to other things like the stem cells. We have all kinds of stem cells that we can use. I use bone marrow, fat, umbilical cord. All of those are good, at least to some degree. And if you know how you manipulate them, you can use all of them or one or two of them, and you get better results than if you just use one. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. So let me ask you this. How are the stem cells transferred to the body, and where are they harvested from? Once you realize that the patient is, they've got good soil and you can work with them, how do those two processes go into play?
It depends on, number one, where you are. And so if you cannot get out of your house, you can't get out of your wheelchair, and you're pretty much immobile, and there's not much way for you to get to my office, then we will maybe actually do it from, be able to send you or send your family member a frozen vial of stem cells, and you just take it out of the box and thaw it out and give an injection into the belly fat. That works fine. Now, and especially those people who are, 3-4 years out after a stroke, they've gone through everything, done everything, and they're saying, well, I would sure like to get better. I got lots of money in the bank account, but it doesn't do me any good because I can't go anywhere and do anything. So all I do is sit here and watch TV. So that kind of a person is somebody that we could help because of the fact that I can evaluate them to a large degree from my office, and then go ahead and ship them frozen stem cells. They just take it out, thaw it out, and give it. And then if they have the wherewithal, then I would add to that brain growth factors, because the combination of brain growth factors that you use by injection as well as stem cells, that's a double hit in terms of effectiveness. So you get double the effectiveness of one stem cell as compared to, or you can give a lot of stem cells and you don't need the growth factors, but the growth factors are generally cheaper than the stem cells. And you need to have these growth factors getting into your body on a daily basis, because the cells, the stem cells, and your other tissues all need to have these growth factors in high concentration to make new blood vessels to the damaged areas of the tissue. And so we need to have as much of these two together, the stem cells and growth factors, to really help rebuild that brain.
Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break, a quick commercial break from Simply-FITT, and then we'll be right back with Dr. Steenblock.
We need some stem cells.
Commercial break. Hey guys, if you're just joining us for the second half of our broadcast, I'm Sandy White from Simply-FITT, your #1 health and wellness cheerleader. And I have been talking in the first half of this segment with Dr. Steenblock. And I got that right. Yay! And we've been talking about stem cell research and all of the wonderful things that it can do. So one of the questions I wanted to jump back into, and I hope you guys enjoyed the commercial break from Simply-FITT. So the question I want to ask you, Dr. Steenblock, is how does stem cell work with someone that's a paraplegic?
Well, we're talking about, with paraplegia, you're talking about in general spinal cord injury. And so a spinal cord injury is, everybody's different who has a spinal cord injury, so it's hard to say for sure that whatever is going to work. But saying that you have to know much more about each disease, and so each process. Generally, I like to get an MRI. And one that's as high a quality as I can, because if you can identify the actual pathology, what's going on with the nerves, then you have a chance of figuring out what to do. So that's one issue that you want to do to start with, is to have a really good evaluation by like a functional MRI. And so then after you do all of that, then you say, okay, what are we going to do? Now, if they have some motor control, they can wiggle their feet and they got sensation in their feet, then that's a good sign. Because that means that the nerve conduction from the brain to the legs is somewhat intact. And that doesn't mean it's all together. If it was, you wouldn't have a problem. So in those cases where there is nerve sensation in the feet and whatnot, then what you can do is start working. You can do just stem cells, and in that area of the damage, you can put stem cells directly into that area of the spinal cord, and that will help the best. If you can get the nerves, get the stem cells directly into that area that's been damaged. That's number one. Number two, if that's impossible for some reason, the patient doesn't want to take a chance and sticking a needle into the damaged tissue or whatever, you can just do it IV, because then if you take, for example, ultrasound to that area and you kind of irritate it with the ultrasound or some other thing that you can irritate the tissues a little bit, that brings the stem cells into that area. So, or for example, PRP, platelet-rich plasma, is a derivative of blood. You take the blood out, spin it down, and you get on the top of the blood, you get these platelets, which are clotting factors, but they have like 7 different growth factors, and you put that into that area, then that attracts the stem cells. So you have growth factors from the PRP, and you have stem cells coming in from wherever, going into that tissue, so you have a better chance of recovery. Now, then we go on to the case that you don't have any sensation, and it's more of a who knows exactly what it is, but if it's not a total transection where like I had one case, somebody he was, let's say, less than an honorable character fellow, and he was robbing a store, I think it was, and they caught him in the act, and he went for his gun, and the policeman was right there and had his gun on, and then he shot him right in the chest, chunk, right there. Just misses. In fact, it did hit his heart just a little bit, and so in the emergency room, they had to open him up and operate in the emergency room to stop the bleeding from his heart where the bullet went through. Well, not only, so they got that fixed, but they did not fix the spinal cord, which was right behind. And so it took out a chunk of a spinal cord about 2.5 inches. That was a big bullet went through there. And so there's not much left. You can't do much for that. So in that case, what we did, we operated on him, and we tried to put that all back together. Actually, we took the sciatic nerve, which is down in your leg, which is about, it's a monster. It's like almost an inch in diameter, just the same size as your spinal cord. And so we took that, cut that out. So he was going to have paralysis of his leg no matter what, because we cut out that. But we wanted to get the rest moving. So we transplanted that up into that area and put it all together and put stem cells in top. But unfortunately, that didn't quite work as well as we wanted it to. But in any case, that was kind of the way you approach that. Now, if you don't have that kind of tremendous break in the cord, then you can, and if it's just more of a scar tissue, more deposits of calcium, something like that, you can use a substance called DMSO. Now, DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, has been around for many years, and it was used and has been used for arthritis. It's been used for scar tissue. It's been used for brain swelling. It's been used for acute traumatic brain injury. It's been promoted as, in fact, I could tell you a story of one. I had a patient with a stroke, and she come to my office for treatment of her stroke. But when you have one stroke, you tend to have another. Well, right in front of me, she has a stroke. And the next thing I know, she's unconscious and dying right in front of me. She just, boom. And I'm going, okay, wow, what do I do with this one? And so I said, well, let me just, I've never done this, but let's try it. So I pulled out my DMSO, and I was friends with the guy that developed it and all that. And we talked about it and discussed it, and I studied it a lot. And so I said, well, it should work. Let's do this. And so I gave this lady like 70 milliliters. That's like 2 ounces, a little bit more than 2 ounces of DMSO IV. And she was unconscious, and she had what's called chain stoking. She was, and I swear to God, within 5 minutes, she sat up and looked at me and said, what's going on? I mean, it was the most miraculous thing I've ever seen in my life, was to give this woman who's dying and have her come back in 5 minutes talking to me as if nothing had happened. Wow, that was something. So the point was, DMSO can do a lot for these kind of cases, for brain injury, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord injury. And if you do it on a repetitive basis, especially with the spinal cord, it helps dissolve the scar tissue. And once you have that scar tissue dissolved, then you have a much better chance of the stem cells getting in there. So I'll try to convince the person to do it, but it takes time to do it, and it costs money, and it smells. DMSO does not smell nice. So you have those negatives. And so you have to balance the negatives versus positives, and if they are willing to do it, then you have a pretty good shot of getting good results with doing something in all of these different situations.
So how often if the patient that's a paraplegic decides, I don't want to go with the, stem cell shot, doing the injection, how long is the DMSO, is that something they would have to take for a lifetime, or is that?
No, you're talking about maybe at the most, maybe a month.
That's not bad.
So, but it's not, you can try, you can do it by oral. And so that's, most people would rather try that, but unfortunately it doesn't work nearly as well. So you kind of say, well, you can do that, but DMSO, because it tastes and smells so bad, I've come up with a way to make it taste halfway decent, and which is really crazy. And I was dealing with I have a little 12-year-old, and he was then about 8 or something. He was complaining about something, and I wanted to give him some medicine, but whatever that medicine was tasted awful. And so I came up with that. I said, what can I fix? And I went to the refrigerator, and sure enough, I happened to have some Nestle's Coffee Mate. Nestle's Coffee Mate, there's the stuff that comes in the bowling ball pins kind of thing, or little Abner's Schmoes. You're too young for remembering little Abner and the Schmoes, but Schmoes were back in the 30s, and they were the best thing ever for the world because they populated themselves, they repopulated themselves, and they were available for you to eat anytime, and they tasted good, and they were good for you, and they didn't cost you anything. So at that point, everybody loved Schmoes because nobody had any money. Everybody was hungry. And so Schmoes became a real popular thing in Little Abner. Anyway, this bottle of Nestle's Coffee Mate, you take 2 tablespoons and 8 ounces, put a tablespoon of your DMSO, mix it up, tastes great. Otherwise, it tastes like yuck. Blech. And so you can't drink it at all. But if you do that, you can drink it and drink it and drink it every day. And in general, you can get through that whole thing. So that will help. And that will help anybody with a stroke or traumatic brain injury or spinal cord. And so that's a trick that you can go home or do take away from this meeting, is something that you actually can do. Don't blame me if it tastes bad because you didn't mix it up right. And in general, you don't have any problems other than having other people around you saying, God, you smell. So because it oozes out from your body about 3 feet away. And so if you get within 3 feet of your loved one says, I'm not going to have sex with you, baby, you're done. Or you give him or her a glass of it, you know, because if she drinks it or he drinks it, then he smells or she smells just like you, and he can't tell that you're smelling. So it's a way to, at least you can have your loved ones within your, you know, close vicinity that way.
1 month is not bad. And I know you have to assess each patient. And let me ask you this question. If you've had underlying conditions outside of the stroke, I was just asking because I had a family member that had diabetes, they had a stroke, and they had an aneurysm. And I remember earlier you said if the soil isn't right, doing stem cell isn't going to work. So someone that have all of that, you know, and outside of the list, that's not good soil to work in.
No, and the fact that he's had an aneurysm, or he or she has had an aneurysm, is really a negative because that aneurysm has caused the blood vessels to stretch out and be destroyed, and you know it can be paper thin, and it's awfully hard to rebuild that, and so that's a real problem. Now, if it's just diabetes and a stroke, that's a lot easier, and the reason for that is because we do have remedies to help with that diabetes, and besides stem cells, there's chelation therapy, and that's EDTA chelation therapy. Some people have heard of it, some people have used it, but it's fairly safe and simple. But it is taken IV every other day or so. But over time, it will help repair the blood vessels. It'll help take away the scar tissue. It'll help reduce your blood pressure. And if you do the chelation and then give stem cells after it, that's a good combination because the chelation helps open up the blood vessels. So when you give the stem cells, they're able to go throughout the body and fix a lot of things when you do that. So that's a good combination of doing first chelation and then stem cells. Another combination is do the chelation, then hyperbaric oxygen, and then stem cells. That combination is also very good. Recently there was a paper published out of Germany where they showed that if you do hyperbaric oxygen on a daily basis for 40 treatments, you can actually reverse the aging process as measured by telomere lengths and all that. So you can cause the telomeres to extend and whatnot, which means that you're younger and healthier by having gone through that. By doing it, also you start to grow hair. And I've been doing it myself. I've had about 10 treatments, and I can see my hair starting to grow out. So there is some truth to it. And I've seen other patients who've seen their hair grow out. Now, it's not, you don't get all your hair out, but it's a start. And so if you do that with stem cells, of PRP, and all these other factors, you have a much better chance of getting your hair back.
Now, and I know some people would like that, getting the hair back. Real quick, I know you said the stem cells doesn't work for someone that had an aneurysm and diabetes and all that, but does the DMSO work for them, or is still a no-go and they need to go with the second option that you mentioned with the
you got two real things that you can do with an aneurysm is operate, remove it, and put in or you can have I think they do have catheters they put into the artery, and they put a stent in, and so you can put a stent in, and if that's not working, you can, there are points in time where stem cells might be helpful, so there's things you can do. It's a technically kind of, you have to think about it, you have to evaluate, you have to do this and that to try to make it all happen. But but at least there's a chance that you can help repair that. But again, not a good thing to have.
Right. So you have been so interesting and patient with me and answering all of our questions. We appreciate that. So anybody that may be interested in seeing if they are a good candidate for stem cell and they want to work with you, how can they reach you? Tell them how they can reach you.
Well, number one, my website is strokedoctor.com. Strokedoctor.com. That's pretty easy to remember. The reason, because it's been around for a long time and I've treated thousands of patients with stroke. So, I had a patient in yesterday and I go blah, 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 blah. And I go on and on and on about all the different things that you need to do, because there's a lot of things that people don't realize and don't understand and don't know. So if nothing else, it's worth just calling and talking to me about what they can do, particularly for their particular loved one. So that's good. So my phone number is 949-367-8870. 949-367-8870. And just give the office a call. And we like to always have the records to see, kind of what has gone on, because, everybody's different. Everybody's got different problems and all that. And, I've seen, like I say, I don't know, 50,000 patients over the last 50 years. This is my 51st year, I think, in practice. So, I started practicing in 1970. So now it's 21. So it's a few years. And so in all those years, you actually get to learn a few things here and there, and especially if you study a lot. And I studied the whole time. And so as compared to most other doctors who don't, and once they finish their medical school, that's it. But I have one of the largest private medical libraries in the world. I have my own stem cell laboratory. So people say, well, why can you do what you can do? And that is, the reason I can do what I can do is because I'm a licensed physician and I practice under the state laws, not the FDA. The FDA will tell you, oh, it's all illegal to do this and illegal to do that, but they have no jurisdiction over a medical practice. And so as long as I don't promote stem cells as a cure for stroke or a cure for this or for that, then I'm okay. So, let's understand, first of all, that I'm not promising anything from anybody about stem cells. All I can do is tell you that I've got them and they have been helpful for a lot of other people, for a lot of other conditions. And so we'll go from there. So, if I start making claims, then the FDA can come after me. So I try not to make any claims. I try not to promise anything. I try to say only that I'm going to do as much as I can to help you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Steenblock. We appreciate you coming on to the show. And guys, he said if you want to get in contact with him to see if you are a candidate, go to Stroke Doctor or dial 949-367-8870. Guys, this has been an incredible time talking about stem cells. I'm your host, Sandy White of Simply-FITT, your #1 health and wellness cheerleader. Remember, we broadcast on Wednesday night Eastern Standard Time at 7 p.m. on WYTV7.org platform. And until next week, we'll see you later. Bye, Dr. Steenblock. I did it again. Steenblock. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made for good people. That's why I love Happy Living's online e-course. It's an 8-week-long deep dive into you and the inspired life you want to live. The life you were put here on this earth to live. The one that you and only you can live. 8 weeks of lectures and ideas and topics and supporting materials and powerful self-improvement tools. All designed for you. All designed to help you create the tools and the power and the confidence you need to discover your purpose and to discover the life you were meant to live, and to feel incredibly inspired and motivated to decide you will live your life to its fullest. It's all designed to help you create the unique and distinct philosophy of you and your inspired life. Go to happyliving.com, select our e-course, and save $100 with promo code WYTV7. And for every enrollment, I'll donate another $100 to WITV7. For $300 and about 30 hours, I promise you'll never, ever be the same again.